And if the supply of money will reduce, the consumption will reduce, inflation will reduce, and hi guys, and welcome to Mentor Me's YouTube channel. My name is Allen Aravindan. I'm a CFA charter holder, and today I've come up with a new topic on talking about how does currency valuation work, right? How does the entire system of deciding on what the value of a currency will be gets decided, right? So it's a short video, and I've tried to simplify this. Specifically, this might be useful for people who are in finance and want to understand how does this various factors work, because although we've understood all of these things, but I'll just try to simplify this in terms of a very simple fundamental, right? And if you like our video, if you like our content, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel to get updated with all the content which keeps on coming every week, right? So let's get started. The fundamental is really not going to change, right? So uh, the value of anything is finally related to its demand. So if you have something which is very valuable, then the price of such a commodity or such a product is obviously going to increase, right? And if the value of the actual value, the worth of that good or product or service is not that valuable, then the price is going to be obviously low, right? So the fundamental is not really going to be different even in case of currency, right? So let's understand that the basic fundamental is still that if the demand is higher, then the prices will increase, and if the supply and on the other hand, that can be a result of the supply being lower, right? So think about any product at any point in time. Whenever the prices of a product increases, what is the real reason? The reason is actually the supply is lower, or more people want the same person, right? And this could be the same case even in case of an appreciating currency. So if you talk about, let's say, the INR, right, appreciating, right, the reason could be that the supply of INR is low and the demand for INR is very high, right? And let's look at the other way around. The other way around is that the supply is higher, so there is a lot of INR available in the market, but the demand is lower now. So if the demand is lower and the supply is higher, the prices of the currency is going to depreciate, right? Now this is obviously the main demand and supply game that happens, but what are the factors to it, right? Before 1971, before Nixon actually abolished valuing currency basis the amount of gold that a country has, because at that time US had the highest amount of gold. So the currency was actually not valuable, but what was valuable was the amount of gold which was backing it, right? Now that got abolished in 1971, because until that time it used to be called as the golden standard, right? So after that, it entirely depended on the credibility of the government. So every note that gets made is basically valued as much as the credibility of the one who is supplying it. Now, how does the credibility of the one who's supplying the note gets decided? Basis on the country's policies, how much business does the country does, what are the interest rates, what are the investment opportunities, all those normal factors which affect a country now would affect the value of the currency. So it also came up to be known as fiat money, right? Now the word is actually derived from a Latin word which basically means it shall be, right? So this obviously opened doors, because now the central bank on the government had more flexibility in controlling the value of the currency, which was a very very big advantage. Right now, let's go further. Now, who are the people who can actually change this game of currency, right? Who can either increase the value or decrease the value? The first being obviously the Reserve Bank in case of India, and in case of US, it's the Fed, right? Second is business in general. I mean, are you a country which generates products or is manufacturing friendly? So you are exporting a lot. Example is China, right? They export a lot of goods, as a result of which the demand for the currency is higher, right? And let's talk about the third, and the monetary policy, right? The monetary policy basically are some tools which the country or the government can use to somehow get control over their currency. But there are obviously restrictions to it. There's only so much you can do. But the major factors which are going to be affecting are the business, right? So overall, if you can't really expect a country to have a very nice monetary policy, but then at the business level they are not good. So the major factor is going to be the business, right? And all the other factors like monetary policy are, you can say, supporting factors, right? And we'll get to some examples so that you understand this better. But now understand that once the golden standard is gone, now the entire flexibility is with the people who are running the show in the country, right? Also try to understand, is there a way by which I can probably fix the value of a currency versus keeping it open, right? So China is an example which pegged its currency in the 1900s itself. Specifically 1994 is where they pegged the currency against the USD, which basically means they fixed it. They don't want the rate of the yuan to change against the USD. Right now, if you look at this chart, obviously it looks as if it's going up and down. But if you actually look at the value, right, it's this is basically how much USD is equal to 1 yuan. Okay, so I've made it this way so that you understand better, right? So you'll see that it's around about 0.16 even in 2013, and it keeps fluctuating between a very closed value of 0.16 to 0.13, right? So that's the benefit. This is basically the manipulation that China did, so that their exports are more attractive, right? Because if the currency does not fluctuate much, it is a boon for the business people because they can really predict how much the currency value is going to be, versus a floating currency which basically keeps on changing, right? So if you see yuan versus INR also has not changed much, right? If you see how much is 1 yuan equal to how many INR. So even in 2011 you would say about that's about let's say about 8, and now it's about 11.681. Now the effect of the currency changing is also because of just India, right? India and US relationships, rather than anything specific between China and India, right? So this is pegged currency versus floating, which means it keeps on fluctuating. Like Indian currency is a fluctuating currency, right? Now the factors for this relationship. Now the first factor is, as I discussed, is exports and imports, right? So higher exports, right? So if India starts exporting more of its goods, that means more INR currency will be bought, right? Because you would end up buying the good and finally in INR, right? So you would have to actually buy my currency to get my goods, right? And higher imports mean basically more of my currency being sold, right? That means if I'm purchasing goods from the US, obviously I have to pay dollars to buy their goods, and in return I will have to sell my currency, INR currency. So this will lead to depreciation of the currency, and this will lead to appreciation of the currency, right? So basic fundamental. Again, let's move further. If money supply, on the other hand, if there is more circulation, that means if RBI starts printing more money, uh, which would mean that there's more money available in the market, which would again lower the demand for that currency itself, right? Versus less circulation, especially in terms when the RBI comes and uh, increases the interest rates, basically the value of money increases because there's less money available in the market, right? We'll understand that also with examples, right? So let's first talk about trade, right? Very simple. Trade, if imports are greater than exports, basically you come under trade deficit, right? Now if you look at India has been in trade deficit forever. There was, I think, only 1 month post COVID, during COVID, that time India was actually in a trade surplus, but otherwise India has always been in a trade deficit, right? So basically you're importing more than exporting. So obviously it is, when we understood supply and demand, it's pretty obvious that the currency value is going to depreciate, right? And on the other hand, if your exports are higher than imports, then it's a trade surplus. Now can you guess the country which would have the trade surplus? You guessed it right, it's China. So if you look at China versus India, if you see all these years, China has been in trade surplus, right? Now that's the main reason why they had pegged the currency in the first place, because their exports are more attractive, and that's the reason why if you see now every manufacturing unit is finally in China, right? And if you see India's status, if you see, we are almost always in trade deficit. Now you should try to understand why India is in trade deficit. Okay, there's a very very simple reason why it is. Of course, the exports are not great, but there's one more big reason why this happens. Now, if you look at China versus US, okay, so the dotted line is basically US. Even in that case, if you see, US was in trade surplus for a lot of time, but post 2020, now it has started getting into trade deficit, but the amount is obviously not as big as it has been, right? So if US keeps on being in trade surplus, then their currency also has a chance of appreciating out. Now, remember, why is India in trade deficit? So the main reason is the crude curse, right? Because India is one of the largest importers of crude, and since it imports crude, it has to import it from various countries, including and majorly the problem is that buying and selling happens in dollars, right? So that would mean that if you're buying dollars to buy crude, what is going to happen? Your INR is going to depreciate, right? That's the reason why there were some countries that India wanted to specifically buy crude from, uh, which would not happen in dollars. So if it did not happen in dollars, then there were less chances of India's currency depreciating against the dollar, right? So if you look at this chart, and what I've done is I've tried to compare the USD INR rate, our currency rate, versus the amount of crude imports, right? So if you see the crude imports, I mean, it can't really go down, right? Except this is the point where we had COVID, and it was just 1 year. So 1 year is not going to really have a lot of effect on the USD INR currency. But if you see out here, your currency has been depreciating, appreciating. So your INR is becoming more valuable. The reason is since 2016, 2017, for about 2 years of time, the amount of imports had reduced, right? But after that, again, you had a significant increase in crude, and that's the reason why your currency is depreciating, right? So it has a direct relationship with currency, right? Now, second factor is circulation, right? So circulation basically means the amount of money which is available, the currency which is available in the market. So if you see from 2015, we were at 14.48, and now we are at 28.3, and you can see as your circulation keeps on increasing. In fact, you can also see this is almost demonetization out here, right? So your currency under circulation went down, but that helped in your currency obviously appreciating, right? So the value of the currency going down is basically called as appreciating, right? So, and from 2018 onwards, again, your supply of money has increased, and especially during COVID, because there was no choice but to print money. So the circulation increased because the government had to push for people spending more, so that there are more revenue which is generated. But that resulted in significantly your rupee depreciating against the dollar since 2018. So from 65 to 73, we have reached in about what 4 years, right? And this has not just been the case between 2015 and 20. It has always been the case because you are a net importer, right? Now let's summarize the effect out here. So if you see, there are various effects we spoke about. Circulation is one. Interest rates is also one. So if you see, as you keep on decreasing the interest rates, also there is more money available. People are spending more, which again causes inflation. And when it causes inflation, it also affects your currency. And if you see, this is the trade deficit. If you see, in all the years, mostly all the years, you are on a trade deficit as a percentage. I've written percent of GDP so that you understand it better, right? So times when you are probably in a lower trade deficit, your currency tends to appreciate, right? So if you see, from 67, it has gone to 66 to 65. But then again, you're gone to 69 because first of all, your circulation of money effect is higher, right? Even though your trade deficit is actually reduced, but your circulation of the currency has increased significantly, because of which your INR has depreciated, right? So now let's look at the currency depreciation scenario. What are the tools available with you? Exactly the effect, right? So main reason why RBI would be interested in controlling this is because uh, finally it affects inflation, right? So you could increase the interest rate. So if you increase the increased interest rates, then people will not take up loans. Supply of money will be difficult, right? And which will make your currency again be under control, right? Duty on imports, you could ban certain things which could possibly ban. Now you can't really ban crude because you need fuel, but you could definitely ban gold imports. You could charge heavy duty on luxury items which you import from other countries, right? Higher taxes on fuel, which would probably now that's also two-sided, because if you charge higher on fuel, you also get the revenue in terms of the government, but the other part is it has a lot of political angle to it, right? Increase the liquidity ratio for the banks, so the banks have to keep a higher amount of money with RBI as a safety ratio, right? And you could also buy foreign exchange. So if you buy a lot of dollars in the market, then your currency will also appreciate, right? So again, supply and demand, but this is again this is not a sustainable solution, right? uh, I mean, it is a one time. If you just want to somehow just stop the currency depreciating, this you would do basically on a very challenging situations when the currency has been going on a spiral drop. That is when possibly you would go and buy foreign exchange. But also it could be as a part of a regular program of buying foreign exchange, right? Now let's look at the same thing that I was talking about, the buying of foreign exchange. And I see across 2015 to 2021, the RBI has been significantly buying the foreign exchange, right? And if you see the amount of foreign exchange buying has obviously increased, right? Because remember what was happening before. Your supply of money is increased, so your currency is depreciating, so you have to act, right? And this is your RBI's way of protecting the currency from depreciating significantly. Because if RBI wouldn't have done this, then your currency would have depreciated now. Uh, in one way, that is almost like manipulating the markets, because finally the currency should find its own value. But nevertheless, these are the foreign reserves of RBI. So if you see, if you look at 2019, it's about somewhere around this value. So if you look at specifically 19 and 20, the amount of foreign buying has dollar buying has increased from 26 to 90. So that's significant, right? So you're just trying to protect the currency, and that's the reason why it is still at 72 and 73. Otherwise it would have gone probably at 80, right? So that's how the value of currency gets decided, guys. And I hope I was able to simplify this. And next time when you actually look at some news related to economics, you should be able to use these various examples to understand what how it affects, right? So if you hear the RBI coming and probably cutting the rates, you will understand why it has been done, so as to boost up consumption, right? But you should also understand that if the rates are cut, the interest rates come low, then the consumption will increase and the inflation will increase, and finally your currency will depreciate. On the other hand, if you actually find the RBI coming and let's say increasing the rates, then you will understand that the supply of money will reduce, right? And if the supply of money will reduce, the consumption will reduce, inflation will reduce, and the currency will appreciate, right? So this is just a small video so that you are able to relate things. And specifically in finance interviews, if you are ever asked questions on currency and economics, you might be able to get a simple map on how to relate things. So I hope you liked the video, guys, and I hope I was able to simplify it. If you like the content, please do not forget to subscribe my channel, and I will come up with another concept next week. I'll see you then. Bye bye.